Hello and welcome. I'm Catalina Marchant de Abreu, and you're watching W News. Broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios, these are our top stories. Trump launches his Board of Peace in Davos with 19 countries, but UK and Europe voiced concerns over Russia's involvement and Greenland tensions. Zelenskyy tells Davos nothing has changed in Ukraine as he criticizes Europe's inaction and questions NATO's effectiveness. And sinners and actor Timothée Chalamet break Oscar nomination records as this year's contenders for the 98th Academy Awards are announced. Donald Trump has launched his new Board of Peace in Davos during the World Economic Forum, with 19 countries signing on to address global conflicts, starting with Gaza. Some nations, including the UK, are holding off over concerns about Russia's potential role in the board. The initiative comes amid tensions over Trump's comments on Greenland and trade, adding strain to relations with European allies. Take a listen to what he had to say.
It's going to be a great plan, and that's where the Board of Peace really started. And I think we can spread out to other things as we succeed with Gaza. We're going to be very successful in Gaza. It's going to be a great thing to watch, and we can do other things. We can do numerous other things. Once this board is completely formed, we can do pretty much whatever we want to do, and we'll do it in conjunction with the United Nations. You know, I've always said the United Nations has got tremendous potential, has not used it.
To discuss this and all of our today's top stories, I'm joined in studio by Managing Director of This is Dubai, Michael Jabri Pickett. Thank you for joining us today again. And correspondent and columnist, our own Gemma White. Thank you for joining us as well. So, Gemma, we're going to start with you. More countries have actually joined this Board of Peace at Davos. What more do we know about those who have signed up? What does it say about those who haven't?
So we have to divide this list up into countries who've accepted, those who are undecided, and those who've said an emphatic no. So let's go through the countries who have accepted. We've got the UAE, and Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan will also sit on the board. We have Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Qatar, Indonesia, Pakistan, Vietnam, Argentina, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Paraguay, Morocco, Hungary, Kosovo, Belarus, and Azerbaijan. Now, countries that have declined, quite unsurprisingly, France, Norway, Sweden, Slovenia, and Italy. And some have been quite vocal, you know, because of potential Russian involvement. They're not going to get involved. Others have kept playing their cards quite close to their chest, you know, sort of, no, we're not interested. Now, there's countries that are undecided. We've got China, India, Germany. Canada was on the fence, but the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, said today that he will join with conditions. Russia, Ukraine, the UK and Ireland. Now, the UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has said UK won't be one of the signatories today. So it's not a no, it's also not a yes. So they are the countries that are so far involved. Now, as well, you've only got 2 NATO countries that have joined, which is Hungary and Turkey. There has been some confusion over Russia because Trump gave the impression that the Russia has signed on and that Putin would even be joining the board. And then the Kremlin came out in their usual way and said, no, we need to review the documents. This isn't true. It's not happening. So what's also interesting is they've invited Pope Leo XIV to join, but no word yet on whether he will join this Board of Peace. I think it's very interesting because you've got so many, there'll be so many conditions which all the countries are going to bring. Now, you've got Belarus here, and they are a staunch Russian ally, and they're one of the reasons that Ukraine has said they're not going to join, as well as potential Russian involvement. You also have Benjamin Netanyahu, who's going to be on the board. I think there's a lot of irony going on. You know, he's wanted for, you know, war crimes, and he's been invited onto the Board of Peace. He is said to not have been happy about the inclusion of Turkey and Qatar on the previous Gaza Executive Board from which this has sprung from. There are so many moving parts. This whole list could change again tomorrow, who knows?
Exactly. And Michael, we also have some emerging details about the room that was shown, this new Gaza slideshow that was presented by Trump and his advisor, Jared Kushner. So tell us some more about this slideshow that they were shown.
So they treated it just like you would expect the son-in-law of a real estate tycoon to treat it. It was very much transactional. It was not about the Palestinians. It was not about the West Bank. It had nothing to do with the institutions that have been around for hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. It was very much just artists' renderings of what it will look like in their mind. And it, to me, it seemed like it could have been parts of Dubai. Some of the buildings and some of the size of the buildings, the height, the towers right on the coast. It was impressive to look at. But it didn't capture the spirit of the Palestinians. And I think that that is a little bit consistent with the way that they've set up the Board of Peace. There are no Palestinians who are involved. And when Jared Kushner was up there, he was full of praise for his father-in-law, the President of the United States. But there wasn't, again, there wasn't any of the concerns that the Palestinian people would have. I did like one comment when he said that there is no plan B. And that makes me think that this is what they want. Now, is it unfortunate that they're not taking into account the Palestinians? Yes. But if they could pull this off, it would be a spectacular move that surely the Palestinians would have to agree that they would benefit from.
Exactly. But so perhaps Trump may be treating this as another real estate project here.
With funding coming from the Board of Peace, right? Because to get a seat on the board, it will cost you $1 billion.
But I don't know that he would want to give up that money because he's in charge. He's also the treasurer of that.
Okay, yeah. So he's the chairman of the board
Yes.
and the treasurer. Okay, yeah, that's some quite powerful positions.
And there was another interesting point here because it's a concern that has been brought up by some countries that haven't joined. Notably also, I think France also voiced this concern because Trump is now saying that the Board of Peace will work alongside the UN. So how do you think this will work, Gemma? And do you think this can actually work, or are they competing with these mainstream organizations like the UN, or just Trump here just rattling every organization in the world here?
He has given contrasting information as well. There's been times he's I think he said like replace the UN or words to that effect, and that got quite a big outcry. And so now it's working alongside. Now, so then we've got how is it going to work alongside the UN? Why aren't we putting the attention and the time into fixing these perceived issues with the UN? I think what's most interesting about this is Trump has made himself the chairman of this Board of Peace almost in perpetuity. There's no fixed term here like there is for the presidency. You do X amount of years and X amount of terms. So what he's done is he's given himself a very powerful job for when his second presidential term ends until he says so.
Exactly. And we were also discussing off-scene that Putin, obviously we know, was invited to join, but Zelenskyy wasn't.
You wouldn't expect the two of them to sit on anything together. Even the meeting that the Ukraine and Russian delegations will have with the Americans in the next couple of days, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit, you're not going to expect President Zelenskyy and President Putin to come together, even in that situation. So for them to sit on, especially something that's called the Board of Peace, I can't imagine that. I mean, the irony would be, too much for anybody to handle, and I just can't imagine that would be the case.
Exactly, and lots of competing nations as well. There's a question of Israel with Turkey. So how is this board going to work effectively, right? But stay right there as we do move on to another story here. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy has addressed the World Economic Forum in Davos, saying nothing has changed on the ground in Ukraine. He criticized Europe's inaction as Russian oil continues to fund the war, while calling a U.S. backstop essential and questioning NATO's ability to act without American support. He spoke shortly after a private meeting with Donald Trump, which he described as productive and substantial. So, Gemma, what do you make of what Zelenskyy had to say at Davos? Does he sound optimistic here, or is he acting with caution? What do you think?
He had a lot to say. He had a lot to say to Europe, and I actually hope Europe and European leaders are listening, because I agree with an awful lot of what he was saying. And obviously he's speaking from his experience. You know, the war is 4 years deep now. So he did talk about his meeting with Trump. Both him and Trump said the meeting was good, but they didn't release a joint statement afterwards. You know, it wasn't anything beyond, you know, kind of lip service. So it was a good meeting. And then he shifted his attention to European leaders. He called Europe a beautiful but fragmented kaleidoscope of small and middle powers, and he criticised them for looking lost, which I wholeheartedly agree with. He pushed the message time and time again that America is not coming to save you anymore. And I do think that ever since World War II, there has been this notion that if something happens, you know, we'll just put in a phone call to Dad, the US, and they'll sweep in and save us. And that was an image that America was very happy to perpetuate, you know, America, world peace. But Zelenskyy is saying that that's finished, that era is over. And Trump has, you know, he's given so many indications as well that that's over. So everything Zelenskyy was saying really rang true. He called on the Europeans to put together a joint military armed forces from all the nations. He said, he also posed them a question. He said, who do you think will respond if Putin invades Lithuania or he strike on Poland? Again, you know, who's going to come to the fore? He said it's a very valid question, but he also tackled Greenland. He used Greenland as an analogy for how European leaders are not acting on anything. But he also said, listen, China and Russia are circling Greenland. We know this. So there was perhaps, I took that as perhaps some support for what Trump's trying to do in Greenland. I'm not sure.
I think it was also, it helps him a little bit of scaremongering. And if everybody else is feeling a little bit scared and he leans into that, then maybe they'll recognize, oh, they actually do need to come to his support.
Yeah.
Do you think, Gemma, that perhaps, as you did mention, he was probably influenced by Trump after his meeting, because he does seem to resonate with everything that he's saying about NATO, Europe, criticism on that, on Greenland?
What's interesting to me is he met Trump and then he came out and he kept saying, America's not going to help you. You've got to go it alone. Europe, you've got to get your act together. And I'm like, was that a criticism of Trump? You know, was it a criticism saying America is not helping anyone anymore apart from themselves? Or, yeah, was he kind of learning from the Trump playbook and he's coming out and it wasn't a criticism of Trump, it was more really an observation of what's going on in the world?
And you can't see Donald Trump disagreeing with anything
No,
that
and
Zelenskyy said.
absolutely not. Yeah, Trump would have said exactly the same things. Yeah, it's so true.
Exactly, and something, Michael, that he was another criticism of Zelenskyy. He actually asked why Maduro's on trial and Putin is not. So does he have a point here?
He absolutely does have a point. This is one of the criticisms that gets leveled against the Trump administration, is this sense of hypocrisy. How are you putting someone like him on trial, where just a few weeks before he was captured, he released the former Honduras president who had been convicted and was in an American prison for trafficking cocaine. So the hypocrisy exists. But what surprises me is that President Zelenskyy has been in this situation. Next month, he'll be starting the 5th year of the war. He's been in this situation for a long time. He's flown around the world meeting with world leaders. Yeah. He knows how the game is played, and yet he consistently bangs his head against the wall, trying to get them to see that America's not going to come to the rescue, that NATO is fractured, and that the UN is not working the way that it should. I would think after a certain point, you would start to maybe come up with a different approach, because what you're doing is not working, so you need to think outside the box. I'm surprised, because he is a smart man, I'm surprised he hasn't come up with a different way to get everybody's attention. But maybe that first shot was today, where I'm going to take the gloves off and I'm going to start criticizing the people who, at least in front of the press, have been saying they support me. But now I'm actually going to go after them, and this is where he talked an awful lot about Groundhog Day, right? I've been here before, we've been here before. This is near the end of the 4th year, And this is going on, and nothing's happening.
Exactly, and there's also competing versions here because he's saying that everything's the same in the ground, nothing's changed, while Trump and his administration are voicing optimism, saying that 90% of the stuff is getting done and that they're close to a deal. So I think we're going to have to see this soon. Michael, we're going to go on to another question with you, now onto Russia, because Steve Witkoff, U.S. Special Envoy, he was expected to meet Putin today. Now this meeting is going to happen on Friday. So what should we expect out of this meeting?
So we have to read a little bit between the lines, and we have to assume that if we've been following it for a few years now, we have to recognize that everything seems to be coming to a head. And I think you only get that sense if you've been watching the story move. I believe that there will be a proposal of some sort that's presented to the Russian delegation. So this is the first trilateral meeting between the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia. It's happening in the UAE. And I don't think you all come together if you're not very close to the finish line.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic that something will happen. Donald Trump has been speaking positively. Steve Witkoff has, and even President Zelenskyy has been saying things. Now, Vladimir Putin, of course, hasn't, but he hasn't spoken throughout any of this. So I do believe that there will be something that will be presented finally to the Russian delegation. But how long for them to accept it? Because I also am very much of the opinion that the Russians have been kept up to date with everything that's going on. So it's not as though they're going to be presented with something and they have no idea and they're going to need 3 weeks to go through it. I don't think that's the case. Everybody's also saying there's only one issue right now that seems to be land and an economic free zone of some sort. That is the only sticking point, according to those people who have spoken on the issue.
That's right. And Russia is also the one who actually asked for this meeting with Steve Witkoff, which is actually unusual from their part. So I think we're kind of in for a surprise this week. We don't know what's going to happen. What do you think is going to come out from this meeting, the trilateral and the one with the U.S. envoy, Steve Witkoff?
It would be great if something did come out of it, but we've been here before, right? Time and time again. And we sit there waiting for Russia to blink or even, make a tiny little concession, and they simply don't. And they've never really given an indication that they're going to. So again, is this, banging your head against the wall and keep going into a situation and expecting a different outcome when all signs point to exactly the same outcome? But I think you're right. They're all coming to the UAE tomorrow. This can't be another wasted chance. No.
Okay. And thank you both for your thoughts there. So let's move on to another story. Prince Harry has been in court again today, this time to support actress Elizabeth Hurley, who's also suing the publishers of the Daily Mail newspaper over alleged claims of unlawful information gathering. Elizabeth tearfully gave evidence saying her dining room was bugged. It comes after the prince had an emotional day giving evidence yesterday, saying the press made his wife's life a misery. Gemma, we're going to start with you here. Prince Harry told the court Associated Newspapers Limited, the Daily Mail, made his wife's life miserable to the point where it felt like full-blown stalking. Given the history, of course, that we all know with his mother and the press, well, you can understand why he's taking some action here.
I do. This is his third action against the press in the past, just kind of 3 or 4 years, actually. And he has won the last two. He's won substantial damages and he's won public apologies as well. So I actually do understand his stance and I do have a lot of sympathy. It cannot be easy relentlessly seeing stories about yourself and your loved ones in the press over and over again. And what's interesting is the actual time frame of stories that he is in court over. He wasn't with Meghan Markle at the time. He was with his previous girlfriend, Chelsea Davy. They were together about 5 or 6 years. So this shows how, far back it's gone. Now, it's a very tricky situation. As a British person, I know, or we all know, that the British royal family has a long-standing relationship with the press, and that each court within the royal family, Charles and Camilla, Kate and William, Harry, would have had their own relationships with different editors of different newspapers. And it would always have been kind of, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, we'll feed you information and you'll give us positive press in return. Now, it's also quite common knowledge that they do brief against each other as well, that William and Kate's courtiers might brief against Charles and Camilla. So it's complex and it's messy and it's deep and it's so intertwined. So I think what's interesting as well is because Harry, you know, he saw what his mother went through with the press. She was the most photographed woman in the entire world. She was followed absolutely everywhere she went. But he still can't seem to accept that Diana also colluded with the press, you know, when she wanted coverage for her causes, with if she wanted publicity on that day. It's a really fine line and there's a lot of nuance here. This is not black or white. And whilst I do support Harry in his court case, I think he's not grasping the grey areas here.
Exactly, Gemma, and I think this word is coming up a lot today with this Harry case today in court, because there's a lot of talk about his behavior. Do you think the court can feel sympathy for him? What's the deal here with them sympathizing for Prince Harry?
He's been very emotional on the stand, and a couple of times as well, the judge has had to upbraid him for his attitude, where he's been quite abrupt, or he's almost editorializing. You know, and the judge has warned him, you're here to answer the questions, not to give other opinions, you know, answer the questions that are put to you. We're seeing these emotional outbursts. We saw one last year when he lost the case for his security detail in the UK. He did a BBC interview immediately after, and he got quite choked up. Obviously, he's getting choked up. He's talking about his wife, who he loves and is very protective of. But I do wonder as well, when the judge is kind of pulling you up on the stand, you know, he's 41, did we? Yeah, he's 41 now. You know, you've been in the public eye your whole life. You have to let your emotions kind of live a bit deeper in your skin.
Exactly. And Michael, I think you mentioned this before, because Harry is someone, Prince Harry, we've been seeing, he's someone who has press when he wants it, also press when he doesn't. He's been using the press in his favor, of course, with all his deals for his wife, Spotify, Netflix. So what do you make of this in contrast with what he's saying in court?
So I've never worked as a journalist in the UK, but I would think that it would be easy enough, if he was sincere, he could, through lawyers, approach all the editors at all the papers and news outlets, and he could say, let's set some ground rules. I will cooperate and you will have free reign if I am doing Hollywood celebrity type stuff. But if I am trying to go about living my life, taking my kids to school, or I'm back in the UK visiting friends, then, and I'm not a public figure, then hands off. I mean, he is fifth in line. He's never going to be actually anyone of substance when it comes to ruling from a constitutional monarchy point of view. But for whatever reason, he doesn't do that. And I'll give an example. Very famous photograph of his mother in Angola walking through a minefield as she was trying to go, one of her causes, she was trying to make sure that there was demining that was going on. So when he was trying to sell his autobiography, he replicated that. Now, he might have come up with reasons why he was doing it, but journalists are usually cynical. We connected the dots. Oh, you're selling a book. This is one of your famous photographs of your mother. And almost frame for frame, the walk was similar. So there is that connection, because his mother will still sell newspapers. Obviously, he's hoping that that would help sell autobiographies for himself. My point is that he has to come to some sort of understanding within himself and presumably with his wife. What is it that we want? Because the press will not allow you to take what you want and not give what they expect. If you're going to play, then you have to play by the rules. And with British press, there really aren't a lot of rules. But if you set down the parameters and then you stick to them, I think there could be a way forward. But he has to be sincere, and he's going to have to make the effort. Because if he doesn't, it's going to be he's going to be back in court for other cases, no doubt.
They do need to find a compromise here. And staying with you, Michael, as a journalist, you've always got to ask about whether a news story is of public interest. This is always a question for us. So Harry's lawyer has argued a lot of these stories were actually not. So what do you think about this?
So again, if I go back to the point where I say that he's fifth in line, you could very easily argue from a journalist point of view inside a newsroom, this does not have the same gravitas as something that would affect William. That's just a fact. But it might be something that you would call the entertainment editor and ask, are you interested in this? And they would say yes, because it's going to bring us lots of page views, and I know it's going to sell lots of papers, especially if we put it up in the skybox or we put it as a front page photograph. So these are the conversations that would take place in the newsroom, but you would have to, I mean, he's not newsworthy from a traditional news point of view, but he is worthy from the point of view that everybody loves to consume social media content.
All right, we'll stay right there. We're moving on to another story right now. The nominations for this year's Oscars have been announced in Los Angeles. The 98th Academy Awards will take place in March, and the horror film Sinners is up for a record number of 16 nominations. Whilst actor Timothée Chalamet has also made Oscar history after receiving a Best Actor nomination for his role in Marty Supreme. It makes him the youngest man to be nominated in the category 3 times. Now, Michael, the Oscar nominations are out. Who are you tipping for the top nominations? You also had an interesting take on this. You had an analysis of past winners and nominations. So what do you think?
So the reason I'm going to go down my past nominations route is because I'm dodging your question, because I can't remember the last time I was in a cinema. And I certainly no longer have the attention span to watch a 2.5-hour movie. So what I will do is say that the Oscars does an incredibly good job of virtue signaling at that moment in time. They are sentimental for what they're experiencing in the moment. And I'm going to read the titles of a few films, and I'm going to actually have to look down for this. So this one is going to show my age. Dial M for Murder, a great old Alfred Hitchcock movie. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966, the year I was born. The Shining, Scarface, Blade Runner, The Big Lebowski, Heat, Groundhog Day, Reservoir Dogs, The Truman Show, The Dark Knight Rises. Those films, not one of them ever received an Oscar nomination. And those are films that today still resonate with people around the world.
They're considered classics, aren't they?
They absolutely are. Not even an Oscar nomination. Now, some films that have won Oscars, Chariots of Fire, Shakespeare in Love, Chicago, Driving Miss Daisy, great Hollywood virtue signaling film, and The English Patient. So what we're going to see are films that will win, that will represent what it is that the Hollywood Academy, or I guess it's the Hollywood Academy, that the Hollywood Academy sees today or whenever it is that they're actually voting. It will not be an accurate representation of the best films.
Exactly. So that's the question. What drives the Academy for these nominations, right? So moving on from Michael, who hasn't watched the movies, to Gemma, who has.
I have thoughts.
What are your favorites?
I have my predictions, and what I want to do is I want to watch this back when the Oscars happens and see how many I got right. So Best Picture, I think Hamnet is quite a shoo-in. We've seen previously Shakespeare in Love winning. Hollywood loves a film about, you know, Shakespeare, and something with lots of British accents and costumes always goes down very well. Best Actor is going to be, it's a 2-horse race. It's between Leonardo DiCaprio and Timothée Chalamet. As you said, Timothée Chalamet's on his 3rd nomination under the age of 30. But Leonardo DiCaprio, he's only won 1. I think people feel he's been robbed previously. My money would be on Leonardo DiCaprio because One Battle After Another has just won so many accolades. Critics absolutely love it. Best Actress, I think Jessie Buckley in Hamnet. Best Supporting Actress, I think all the other actresses can just go home because I think Tiana Taylor, One Battle After Another, is just going to just walk away with it. Best Supporting Actor is going to be another one, absolutely so close to call, between Benicio del Toro and Sean Penn, both for One Battle After Another. Now, they're both Oscar winners. Sean Penn, double Oscar winner already. So that will be a very close call. And then Best Director, for me, it's between three. Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another, Josh Safdie for Marty Supreme, and Chloe Zhao for Hamnet.
Oh, you're really going out on a limb there. Between three?
Do I have to pick one?
How many are there?
I'm going to pick Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another. It's kind of that and Marty Supreme has been the runaway favourite. Hamnet will pick up, I think, sort of best costume as well, and perhaps best adapted screenplay, obviously from the novel. But yeah, they're my predictions. Yeah, fingers crossed.
And Gemma, I think you've read all about it, right? So you were telling us there was a bit of criticism on Timothée Chalamet also lately. What is this all about?
Yeah, so he's his character in Marty Supreme is very energetic. I mean, it's a Safdie movie, so obviously it's quite chaotic. He's a supremely confident person. And he did a recent interview where he came across as quite cocky. He was saying that over the past few years, he's been doing the best work he's ever done. There was an insinuation there, come on, it's time to honour me, you know, in a way that we never really saw with Leonardo DiCaprio, who was nominated, oh my gosh, so many times, and then only won really a few years ago. So Timothée Chalamet, yeah, this interview raised quite a few eyebrows because if you're nominated, you do have to be humble, even if you don't feel humble, even if you feel that you deserve it and you're amazing. You know, you have to kind of at least play the game and pretend.
Unless you're Will Smith and you slap somebody on the night you win.
Well, if Leonardo DiCaprio wins, Timothée Chalamet can walk up and just give him
Could you imagine
a slap.
that?
It'd be amazing.
What did we say? There's 4 years left for Will Smith to do a comeback.
To return to the Oscars, yes.
But
6 years, I think.
Is it
years?
6?
I think he's done 4 in purgatory.
Yeah.
He's got 6.
We're counting the days.
Yes.
We're counting the years. Also, big contrast on last year's ceremony that was followed by earthquakes and wildfires in LA, as well as it was the aftermath of the writers' strike. So does it feel like Hollywood is back on top, or is there something that we're not seeing here?
With the Oscars, irrespective of what's going on in the world, and we have had years where it was supposed to be the muted Oscars, you know, it was a bit more low-key, but Hollywood loves to celebrate itself. You will not find an industry that, you know, celebrates itself more than Hollywood does. So it's always going to be an up, and obviously we have awards season coming up to it. We have the Golden Globes, we have the BAFTAs, we have the SAG Awards, we have the WGA Awards. You know, they're in party season. Hollywood is in party season and working the room season. But it has been a rough few years, not only for LA, but also for the industry. And I think it's just a sign of more fractured and a more complex industry to come. Last year, the industry shrank. It lost 17,000 jobs. And interestingly, between 2019 and 2024, television writing positions in Hollywood was halved. So these are huge numbers. They're also facing, you don't go to the cinema anymore. So many people don't go to the cinema anymore.
Right?
Yeah, they're waiting for it to come on their streaming, and YouTube is the most dominant television platform as well. And as we discussed earlier, F1 and Frankenstein, they were put out by the streamers. They get a theatrical release so they can get an Oscar nomination or at least be considered for it. But people are not going to the cinema anymore, no matter how many tentpole movies they put out. I mean, the most recent Avatar did bring everyone to the cinema. Right? But that's a known franchise. But yeah, it is a big night and it is very exciting and lovely to watch, but it's not really indicative of the issues that Hollywood is facing.
Michael and I are going to have to catch up to you on this one, Gemma. So it's that time of the show where Gemma and Michael have chosen two of their quirkiest stories of the day. We'll start with you, Gemma. Britain is backing Victoria Beckham this week. You're going to have to educate me on this one. She's #1, but for another reason, right?
Right. So I think we don't need to go into it. We all know that Victoria Beckham got publicly savaged by her eldest son online. The whole world is talking about it. It's the latest Wagatha Christie, the new big social media thing we're all talking about. So in the UK, people do love the Beckhams. They hold a very special place in our hearts. And we always remember that Victoria was a Spice Girl. She was Posh Spice. So this grassroots campaign started to get Victoria to #1. Now, when the Spice Girls split up, They all had their solo careers, and she was the only Spice Girl not to have a #1, so everyone else did. And so this campaign began. Let's get Victoria one of her solo songs to #1. And she's, I mean, I don't know if the time we've been on air, if anything's changed, but before we went on air, Not Such an Innocent Girl was #1 in Ireland on iTunes and #2 in the UK. So she's so close. Britain is rallying behind their Posh Spice.
Sympathy for Posh Spice. UK coming together, for one thing at least. So now to Michael. Very interesting story, Michael, because there's this special Christie's auction where people can get their hands on some memorabilia ahead of the U.S. 250th anniversary.
So we the people, America at 250. That's what this Christie's auction that's taking place tomorrow is dubbed. And it's an opportunity with a lot of American relics and wonderful pieces of American folklore that are going to be up for sale. For instance, there'll be a printing of a 1776 Declaration of Independence, which is expected to go for $3 to $5 million. There are only 200 copies, of which only 26 are believed to still exist. There's an edited draft of the U.S. Constitution, also expected, $3 to $5 million. And then there's Gilbert Stuart's portrait of George Washington, which was commissioned by James Madison. And that is believed to be the inspiration for the George Washington portrait that's on the $1 bill. And then I find this one quite interesting. The only known flag recovered by U.S. troops from the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876, and that's expected to go for $2 to $4 million. Now, what's really cool about this is that it's one of the nice things about what collectors are doing, is they are the ones that preserve these incredibly important artifacts, and they also take care of them. So although they stay in private collections more often than not, they do a service from a historical point of view.
Exactly, because that was our question with Gemma. Where does all this memorabilia come from? Because private collectors are really doing a big favor here, right?
Absolutely. And I think usually what happens is somebody will have a great passion for it and it stays with them. And then once they die, it usually is left to the estate. And then maybe the children don't have the same sort of desire to hold on to them, or they want to, you know, in many cases, some of these items might be, some institutions might come along and they want to be the one to have it so that they can display it. So there is a role that the private collector plays, and it's incredibly important from a historical point of view.
It would be nice if these things were like displayed in public, wouldn't it? You know, if
I would love to see.
Yeah, even if a private collector buys it, and I think that would go for way more than $5 million, don't you?
Or if,
I'll be tuning in for that.
if Nicolas Cage was to steal it, I think it would make a great movie.
National Treasure 3.
And Gemma, this is lingering on me still, on Victoria Beckham.
What do you want to know?
Are you team Posh or are you team Brooklyn? And why?
I'm team Posh. 100%. Do I think that there are parts of Brooklyn's Instagram story that ring true? Absolutely. There is no smoke without fire. But ultimately, I do think, come on, Brooklyn, your mum just had a bit of a dance at your wedding and didn't have time to make a dress. You're married to a billionaire, let it go.
Michael, and so sorry, we've been torturing you with this story for 2 days. What do you think? You must have some thoughts by now.
So I look at it as a parent, and I'm sure you do as well. I know we're having a little bit of fun with it as well. But, you know, for a 26-year-old to be so disillusioned that he takes such extreme action feels to me like there are real issues within the family dynamic, and that maybe a couple of people need to work out some issues and maybe see some professional counseling.
Resonates a lot with the story, Harry and Brooklyn, right?
The parallels.
They probably got together
yeah.
this week, talked about it.
People are calling what Brooklyn did, they call it Prince Harrying. So it's become its own verb, yes.
I didn't see that,
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thanks to our two guests here on set discussing all of this, Managing Director of This is Dubai, Michael Jabri Pickett, and correspondent and columnist Gemma White, as always. That's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X. GNT is coming up next.